All right, folks, it is July 26, 2024, and all kinds of things are happening in the news, including some things that are revolving around the Olympics. The Olympics will start today, and actually, there's already been a attack that is taking place that deals with the Olympics. So apparently, there was an arson attack that has incited travel chaos ahead of the opening ceremony. So the Olympic opening ceremony is to kick off on Paris's River Seine amid the rail line disruption. And apparently, there was a malicious attack on the French train network, as I said, ahead of the Olympic opening. So, looks like vandals have targeted France rails with sabotage and arson and all in that space. So, like I said, that is something that we're seeing in the news and among the news situation and all along those lines is in the news reports. So we'll definitely be hearing what our panel has to say about that, as well as the fact that the Obamas have come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. So that is something that came out today as well. So, and in other news, Typhoon Gaming hit China after deaths in Taiwan and Philippines. So it looks like this powerful typhoon is definitely targeting China after it already hit the areas of Taiwan and the Philippines. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And a mysterious skulls and skeletons are unearthed 35 years ago could be linked to notorious war crimes, according to what some Japanese activists are saying, and all along those lines. And definitely looks like monster fires may have destroyed half of a historic Canadian town. So that is something that we're seeing in the town of Jasper and all along those lines. And Mel Stride has announced a conservative leadership bid. So this is something going on. Is the various folks there in the UK are trying to figure out who their leaders are going to be as well. And Venezuela presidential candidates have concluded their campaigns ahead of Sunday's election. So Venezuela opposition leaders provide hopes for many, even though she isn't on the presidential ballot. So there's some people that are looking at different folks as in that way as well, as Venezuela's Maduro bids for a third term in power as U.S. and Brazil warn over the need for free elections. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And Manchester airport arrest, the family calls for calm after a second night of protest. A police officer was suspended there after a violent incident in an airport. And like I said, a lot of people will be paying attention to the Olympics and all along those lines. It looks like Russian reality TV chef Kirill Grasanov is accused of being an FSB spy planning to sabotage the Olympics. So definitely, it looks like that was one of the Russian men that had been among those arrested in plots targeting the Paris Olympics. So it looks like there might be some kind of disruptions that folks are planning during the Olympics as well. And we've already heard about one of those, and we'll see if there are more as well. And four missiles have been launched at Iraq's Ain al Assad Air Base. That's something that is also in the news coming from the Middle East. So it looks like U.S. occupied air bases are coming under fresh attack in Iraq. And Israel is spying on Hezbollah commanders and killing them one by one, according to the Los Angeles Times. So, and the Israel Hamas war, day 294, looks like one was killed and several wounded in an Israeli strike on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. So, definitely, this war does seem to be continuing because we're only a few days away from it being in its 300th day and all along those lines. And there's a race against time to clear an oil spill in the Philippines, as definitely, as I said, Typhoon Gamey had wreaked havoc in Asia, and the Philippines are racing against time after an oil tanker capsized. So the Philippines are preparing for what could be the worst after oil spill. So definitely that's something that we're seeing in the news as well. And I think we might have reported on this yesterday, but Israeli forces retrieved the bodies of five hostages from the tunnels there in Gaza. So that is something else that folks are paying attention to as well. And the UK won't challenge the ICC arrest warrant request for Netanyahu. That is something else that is going on as well because Britain drops its challenge to that particular arrest warrant. So definitely we'll see what goes on in that way as well. And gangs killed at least 26 villagers in remote Papua New Guinea, according to officials there. So homes were torched, victims beheaded, and taken by crocodiles and all in that kind of way. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. And like I said, let me get to some U.S. news. And then I see a very interesting story that I've got to tease Rick about, because or any of our other folks that are drinkers and all along those lines. But definitely, sometimes you can find some interesting things going on in the space of human interest stories as well. So, a man is accused of pushing a burning car into a gully, causing a California wildfire. So, that is something that is going on. And an ex deputy who fatally shot Sonia Massey was discharged from the Army for serious misconduct. And FBI says investigators are still examining the evidence from the Trump assassination attempt. Trump says the bullet hit the ear, not glass or shrapnel, and Trump is blasting the FBI director Wray's testimony of shrapnel hitting him and not a bullet, because that was something that came up yesterday. Was the FBI director had said it was shrapnel that hit him and not the actual bullet. So definitely, and of course, the campaigns are definitely tossing all kinds of words at each other, and even the whole notion of the cat lady conversation is coming up as well, because definitely looks like Vance's attack on childless cat ladies has become a rallying cry for many women and others in the campaign as well. And U.S. arrested two leaders of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, so definitely including the son of El Chapo, and they were taken into custody. So it looks like the U.S. has arrested the Mexican drug lord El Mayo and El Chapo's son over there in Texas. And Harris says she will not be silent on Gaza suffering, while definitely calling Netanyahu out on some of the humanitarian things that were going on. And I think she was also calling for a two-state solution. So we'll see if this goes on also. And Oklahoma superintendent vows to force schools to teach the Bible, issuing guidance. So definitely, we do know that that is a decision that came out not that long ago. This notion of having the Ten Commandments, I believe that was up in Oklahoma as well. But we'll see what folks have to say about that in this particular edition of World Edition. So, like I said, there's all kinds of interesting things going on in the world, and I'm going to bring my fellow panelists up, whoever's around here with me. But like I said, I was going to mention this thing that was in the news that I thought Rick might be interested in, and definitely Shaquille might be even interested in as well. So I'll bring both of them up and see what they've got to say about a number of the things going on in the world and all along those lines. Hey, Rick, I know that you and I think Shaquille and even myself, we are occasionally get drinks. I know that I'm more of a beer drinker, and I may do wine every once in a while. And apparently, in a shipwreck, the divers have discovered 100 bottles of champagne in a 19th century shipwreck. So they found cases of 150-year-old wine in a shipwreck, and they say it might even be drinkable. I don't know that you want to drink wine that's 150 years old, but
You
y'all may
don't.
know what I do.
My family barely drinks. We opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate my daughter's engagement, and we'd had it for, I don't know, 12 years more, and it had turned to vinegar. So I don't think the
Not that
champagne.
I drink. I don't know what you guys are talking about. But may I just make the suggestion, Rick, that you try and get a aged red wine, because white wine, especially champagne, doesn't tend to do that well unless it's kept in absolutely optimum condition.
Yeah, we no keep it in our pantry for 12 years is not optimum.
That's
Well,
not optimal.
well, I
No.
thought people
Maybe go to a good wine merchant, buy a nice 1996 champagne. That's a nice old wine now. It's 18 years old. It's sublime. Maybe $1,500 a bottle, somewhere around that range. So it'd have to be a real special occasion, but you should be able to get something tasty.
But Shaquille, what do you think of this notion of would you buy or even drink a wine that was 150 years old? Because they did say it was drinkable and everything. And I'm going like, and like I said, I have drunk wine, and I've definitely had family members that love their different taste of wines and everything. But I don't think
Well,
anybody
I'd
would drink
try it. I'd certainly try it. I think I think I've got a port somewhere here from 1915. So yeah, I'd certainly I'd try it first, make sure it's actually drinkable. But would you buy them? Not unless it was a specific collector's item, not like it's a rare wine or something.
Even if you do, you got to be careful because the world of antique wine is rife with fraud. One of the Koch brothers, the guys, the billionaires who donate to conservative causes, there's a third brother who doesn't engage in politics. That guy got taken for more than $10 million with counterfeit wine.
Oh, wow. Actually, it was one of the two famous ones as well. That documentary, Sour Grapes. But there are ways to verify the validity of the wines. I do have to say, you've got to give special hats off to him because he pulled off one hell of a scam. I know all the wine drinkers in the world hate me saying it, but that's a pretty impressive con job, I thought.
Yeah, that was an impressive con job. One of the other things I was
I'm going to see if I can find this 1915. I'm sure it's just here somewhere.
While you're finding that, everything, the other thing that I'd love to hear both of your thoughts about is there is a major sporting event that is coming up, and already it has been ripe with attacks and all along those lines because there are already some people that I think saying that they arrested somebody from the Russian side of the world that might have been planning an attack, and there was definitely this arson attack, and that's literally on the eve of the Olympic Open and all along those lines. And we do know historically about the Munich massacres and a number of other things that have happened that were not the best in terms of security of the Olympics. So, and the Seine had been in trouble, some of the climate activists, because they were wondering about the state of that particular river and all along those lines. So what is your take, and how safe do you think the Olympics will be? I mean, some of you, and particularly you, Shaquille, have traveled the world and have even probably traveled to various sporting events, and we do have a major one that's going to be lasting for several weeks there in Paris, and already there's been an attack that is taking place and everything. So what is your take on it?
Well, you've still got me on the wine, and I actually made a mistake. It's not a 1915. It's a 1912.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
Can you see that year on there?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So that's quite a nice bottle.
I wouldn't want to be a wine collector in Los Angeles. We're overdue for the big earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
But well, the thing is that the Californian wines, American wines in general, but Californian wines is a relatively young industry, very similar to Australia. So as a result, it's much harder to find wines that are 50 years old, for example, that have been aged perfectly, have been cellared perfectly, that sort of stuff. Obviously, the French wineries, the French vineyards, they've got wine that they've been producing wines for hundreds and hundreds of years, but because we're relatively new countries and we have relatively new industries, it's very difficult to find wines from Australia or the US or some of the other parts of the world that have that sort of quality. But yeah, so enough about wine.
Enough about the wine, but we were talking about a 150-year-old wine that was recently discovered, Sasha, and it was discovered in a one of those sea explorations and all along those lines, if I read the story correctly, and all in that kind of way. But yeah, there's a number of other things going on in the world, and the other things that I was talking about was this whole notion of what is going on in the sense of the Olympics and security in the Olympics, because apparently earlier today there was a report of an arson attack, and the rail lines are all snarled there in Paris and everything. So I'm just wondering, because the Olympics do have their opening ceremony today, and of course there's a number of things going on with the Olympics, including new sports. Apparently breakdancing is going to be in the Olympics this year and everything. So I'll see who the major breakdancers are. Maybe Crazy Legs will be there and everything. And of course people are paying attention to Simone Biles going for her third championship, and Noah Lyles and a number of other people that are being touted as who will be the stars. And I know some of the folks from other countries have their favorites.
Is breakdancing something that's going to happen during the opening ceremony, or are you saying that breakdancing is now a competitive sport?
Breakdancing is now a competitive sport.
I mean, it seems weird to us, but the history of the modern Olympics is they try stuff out, and some of it's crazy at the time. I read up, they tried basketball for the first time at Hitler's Olympics, Berlin, 1936, and they played on dirt and grass.
Oh, wow.
Like,
But like, why? Okay, but why breakdancing? Like, why not ballet? I mean, presumably you have more people that participate in ballet than breakdancing. Why not lyrical jazz or, like
I don't know, maybe
Afro dance or something? I mean, there's all sorts of different dancing styles. Why breakdance specifically?
That's a good question. I don't even know who brought breakdancing up as an idea to bring into the Olympics. I was actually shocked when they did that. But then again, they also did what several years back, synchronized swimming, which apparently is very, somewhat seen as popular and everything along those lines. But yeah, they've had other things. Even one of the
outside of the United States and like maybe a couple of other Western countries, how many other countries have a breakdancing team? Or like, is there like a Democratic Republic of Congo breakdancing team? Is there a Ukrainian breakdancing team? Is there a French Polynesia breakdancing team? Or like, what are we talking about here? Who are these breakdancers?
I just looked it up. In 2028, frisbee golf will be an Olympic sport.
Frisbee golf is going to be added too, which is another popular sport. And when did they add the whole bike stunts and all along those lines? Because that's one of those companies is here in North Carolina. They're actually in Holly Springs, and they seem like they do quite well. That's I think the guy's name is Dare.
Are the Olympics just trying to be like cool now? Is that what they're trying to do? They're trying to like be hip for the new generation.
They just try new stuff every time. I mean, not every time, but it depends on the committee. If you make a presentation to the committee, and just because they try it once doesn't mean they'll keep it. Stuff gets kicked out of the Olympics. Sports get eliminated all the time too.
But if you're gonna try stuff, what about like yoga and Pilates? I mean, there's all sorts of things like what.
You can figure out how to score Pilates. Anyway, with the attacks, 800,000 people in Paris right now are not able to get to their destination because the trains have been shut down. They burned like cabling boxes, which I guess means switching boxes, which tell the trains where to go.
Yeah, that's what those are.
And yeah, like every Olympics has a risk of turning into a shit show. The Sochi Olympics.
The benefit with all the risk involved, and you remember what's happened in Munich. So what's the benefit of the Olympiads that you have to take care of millions of people and prepare all the sporting venues and invest so much money and incredible security risk? What's the benefit of holding Olympics?
I mean, as I mentioned to you, Sasha, yesterday, historically speaking, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that knows more than I do, but it was supposed to be a chance for the countries to gather and to actually find some common ground and everything. That was what my understanding of why the Olympic movement started and all along those lines. But as you said, there have been a number of conflicts, whether it was the current ones that are going on during the Paris Olympics, or whether it's the ones that were in the previous Olympics, or whether it might even be the ones that'll be here in 4 years when Los Angeles gets the Olympics. So I hear what you're saying, that it is a very risky proposition, but my understanding is that the whole Olympic movement was to be one of the efforts to bring kind of some unity efforts in the world and everything. Now, whether
I just looked it up, and the Paris Olympics are expected to bring in between $7 and $12 billion to the Paris region. So if they can pull off the Olympics for less than that, then they could make some money.
Yeah, well, that sounds good in theory, but it's not like the 7 to 12 billion that's going to be generated in Paris is going to go to the government who pays who pays whatever they pay for it. But you're right. I mean, it can be a way that you spend a bit of money and you get yourself on the map, and there's an increase in tourism as a result. So I never thought I'd see a second one in Australia, but obviously we have the 2000 Olympics over here, and the 2032, I think it is. I thought it was 2028, but it must be 2032 that the Olympics are coming back to Australia in Brisbane. So that's a great boost, but our countries can afford it. I think it's a real shame when smaller countries can't afford it. I think where they may need to consider what they need to do. But I will say this: if your country can't afford it, then don't bid on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Don't bid on it if you can't afford it.
Right.
But the other thing that goes on, and I don't know, we've talked about it on other shows as well, is that a number of times, even when there were kind of like the Olympic trials and some of the Olympic things that take place leading into the Olympics. Because I know even here in North Carolina, we had one of those Olympic type games, and sometimes they will build things and then they're not always used and everything. So that's the other economic factor that can happen as well, because sometimes they can just sit there empty and they probably could be used.
Well, that's why here in Australia, I would have thought it'd be more logical to either have it again in Sydney or to have it in Melbourne than to have it in Brisbane. But then, like, if you guys were in North Carolina, you might think, well, hey, why does LA need a boost in tourism? Why not build the thing in North Carolina? So it depends. Georgia might have been a good place, but it depends on what the countries are trying to achieve.
The thing with LA is we're huge. We got a bunch of stadiums. We've had the Olympics twice. So the hope is that we don't have to build too much new stuff.
Yeah, that's right. But then building that new stuff can give you a boost. So, for example, a place like Georgia or Florida or any of those sorts of places could also get that boost. I will just say this though, very interesting to see that your governor over there, Rick Newsom, has started to get rid of the homeless encampments because of the Supreme Court rules. What's your thoughts and feelings on that? How are Californians reacting to that?
I've seen editorials saying, that he's kind of betraying, sensitivity to the unhoused. But I mean, he says they can't live on public land anymore. He's going to move them off. Where do they go to? So I mean, we've got more than 100,000 homeless people in California, just 73,000 in LA County alone. I don't know where they go. I mean, I do know where they go. They go under highways. They go, in the bushes, next to underpasses. Some people, build fairly elaborate structures, and it's all up to how many people.
Well, it's a complicated issue, but I think, especially you've got 4 years now to clean up your act before the Olympics. But I think that certainly I would be concerned and have been concerned before if I'm going to buy property over there, outside of Marina Del Rey and Newport Beach and places like that. I'm very concerned. Malibu Beach, things like that. I'd be very concerned where I'm going to put my house. Because, for example, if I bought a place in Venice Beach, I get a little bit nervous walking down Venice Beach. Nothing's ever happened to me there, but I don't exactly feel like I'm walking down, some beautiful street in an expensive city.
No, Venice.
So the idea of getting rid of some of the riffraff, shall we call them, of society is appealing to some people. But you're absolutely right. There's a human element to this. We don't want to criminalize people because they're poor.
Yeah, Venice is the only city where I've actually seen bullets flying. It's super expensive real estate, but it's also, borders on a number of tough areas.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
That's what I don't understand. Like you see, like properties that are worth $20-25 million and stuff, and you're like, what is going on? Even when I was staying near Marina Del Rey, because the Airbnb was a bit cheaper. When I say a bit cheaper, it was like $15,000 a month that I was paying for this thing. And then I find out that I'm in this really bad area, so I moved back over to actually Marina Del Rey. But you see that in Compton. Like Compton's not that far from Beverly Hills. I don't get it. I really don't understand it.
It's just LA's a big, geographically diverse, city. LA covers 400 square miles compared to Manhattan, which is just 24 square miles. So in New York City, everybody runs into everybody else, unless they're frickin' Trump, can afford to travel by limo every place. In LA, we're under policed. New York City has 4 times as many cops per capita as LA does. So, there's.
Well, to be fair, the financial district of America, if not the whole world, is right there in New York. So you're going to need to have a few more police around, right?
Yeah, you're going to have definitely police around New York City and everything. But you raise a good question, Shaquille, and I don't know the answer because we even see it here in Durham, North Carolina, and other places as well. I imagine sausage season in Canada also. But yeah, a number of times you will see some very fancy neighborhoods, and literally around the corner is what is considered the hood or all along those lines. Shucks, I even see it right here where I live because I'm not that far from Duke in a decent apartment complex, but literally I can go out my apartment complex, walk past the bus terminal, and in about a block and a half, I'll be in what is considered the hood and the historical hood at that. So, yeah, and even downtown, you see that as well. So they're developing these fancy neighborhoods next to some other areas, and that's part of where that whole conversation around gentrification comes in. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you got some.
Well, it is a weird dynamic, but I think when people talk about equality, especially when they talk about it in the United States, look, I don't have an issue with there being inequality, but I think there needs to be a minimum standard that everybody should be able to expect to have if they're living in a Western country: healthcare, education, clean roads, safety, and all that sort of stuff. But without going too much into that, I get it. I think that if you're struggling to survive and you're living in poverty and you're looking, a 5-minute walk down the road from you and you're seeing people live in absolute opulence, that's gonna breed resentment. I mean, there's just no way around that. But it's up to everybody, especially those who are wealthier, to actually tackle those challenges and say, this is what we need to do. And it's probably a good segue into politics, which I'm sure you want to get to. But you can't just sit there and say, oh, we're going to tax the rich. You know what? You've been saying that for 100 years, right? Can we come up with something new, please? Because obviously that's not working. That's obviously not going to be a solution. Let's just come up with the same idea and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. It's not working. That hasn't solved anything. So, I think we just need to have more logical conversations, not just in the United States, but everywhere else as well.
Around the world, and speaking of logical conversations, there are some people that will say that it wasn't that logical what she said, because she apparently was forceful in her views of what she thought Israel was doing in the humanitarian space. And yes, she did bring up this whole notion, which I know Sasha has said, and I think others on the network, it might not even be realistic at this particular time and everything, but definitely Kamala came out and said that she was pushing for, if she was to become president, the two-state solution and all along those lines. So maybe that'll make some people love her more. Maybe that'll make some people.
But how does that how is that unique? For as long as I've been alive, they've been talking about having a two-state solution. Israel has offered a two-state solution so many times. The Palestinians have clearly stated they don't want one. How is that going to be a solution? Sasha, come on in.
I would like to figure out actually that there are so many people are talking about two-state solution. It's becoming sort of a mantra, because if you will analyze what's involved in actually, everybody agrees, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's do two-state solution. So apparently it means Israel, which is already exists and it's doing very well and very successful state by itself. So now we need second state to make a two-state solution, as everybody's talking about. And what is that second state? What kind of solution is there when there is a territory when exists only on hate against Jews and Israel? They are not building anything. They are not creating anything. So how you can make a state out of that territory? Anybody will tell me it's the same thing. I just said on some other program. Let's see, somebody says, why don't we send men on Jupiter? Oh, what a great idea. Okay, we'll give you the money. Okay, bring us the business plan. Oh, business plan, okay. You know what? There is no technology exists to do this. So, okay, we are all back to square one. There is no man to be sent on Jupiter. So,
you're supposed to come up. You're supposed to ask for the money to come up with a business plan, right? It's like how the politicians get money.
No, but I'd like to ask you this two-state solution. Okay, Israel is done. It's one state already there. Now, second state. Give me the business plan. What are you going to do on day 1, day 5, then 15, day 25, then 185? What is the plan? How can you make a second state just by talking about it?
But that's exactly my point. They've been saying this shit for the whole time I've been alive, just like with climate change. You had the Kyoto Protocol, then you had Glasgow, then you had the Paris Agreement. How many more of these international agreements do we need to have? Clearly, we're not achieving very much. So why don't we have a proper conversation about it? It's the same thing with all these conflicts, these bureaucrats and these know-it-alls and these academics, sorry, Dan, these academics and the politicians all get together and they come up with absolute nothing.
The
And then they pat themselves on the shoulders for it.
people who are doing their business in global warming and these people are doing quite well, by the way. They're getting grants and they're making all kinds of
Yeah,
money.
of course. They're flying around the world in their private jets. Of course
So
they're doing well.
the people who are talking about two-state solutions, you have to learn something from global warming people, because those global warming people, they did a lot of studies and they have scientists involved and all this stuff. Do the same thing for two-state solution. Prepare. Give us a vision, give us a plan, how you're gonna do it besides talking. It's two-state solution, that's a solution to everything. Explain what do you mean by that and how you're gonna achieve it.
Well, it's never worked. And you're right. Just like global warming and climate change and global freezing, cooling, and whatever we have. So now it's climate change, because no one could decide which way it's going, other than the Earth has these cycles, right? I mean, and human impact is fairly small, but it's true. We need to be more responsible about how we treat the environment and be sensitive to that. That's true. Okay, so here's the problem. You're right, Sasha. There's this environment of hate. Iranians fund terrorism and everything else. It's being used by the Russians and Chinese and everyone to create dissidence and disharmony and war. And the Arab nations don't take any responsibility for Gaza, or for the people of Gaza or the Palestinians. There's plenty of place for them to go that's not there, where it creates strife and dissatisfaction. I realize they think that's their native home, and I sympathize. The problem is there's so much corruption, so much. I mean, they have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars trying to solve the problem, but the people who are the leaders of we talked about this yesterday, of the fringe groups are sitting in another third Arab country in the UE and living opulently while these people suffer in poverty. And every one of those people could have been a millionaire by now if they just would have given them money and given them a plane ticket out of there, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay, so with all these issues, there's always an elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, and it's defining what the elephant is, because it all is political and everybody talks out of both sides of their mouth, and so I'm tired of that. People not being realistic about these things. It's like the homelessness in LA, right? Okay, well, there's lots of places where you can move them and build an encampment, just like United Nations does, right? And take care of these people if you really want to take care of them, right? I mean, we're doing it for the illegal aliens. Why aren't we doing it for our own homeless population in the United States? Although many of those homeless may be illegals, I don't know. I guess that's not the proper political term, is it? Illegal alien? We're talking about them now being undocumented. Is that right? Yeah. See, so we have all this politically correct bullshit.
So what should I call myself when I come for holidays? When I come for holidays to the United States, and if Sasha comes with me from Canada, are we documented aliens? Is that
no? You're just
political correctness.
You're just rich foreign visitors that are here to enjoy the bounties of our country without any responsibility whatsoever for any of the crap that's going on here.
That sounds good. I like it.
So there are plenty of solutions for homeless people can't be implemented because of legal structures, legal protections. If somebody's crazy, you can't hold them on a 5150 insanity charge for more than 72 hours. And there are similar protections for the rights of homeless. You can't just haul them off to camps legally. Similarly, for Israel, there are solutions that are more likely to work than, but
like what?
But so if you look at but they're not implementable. Nobody's going to do them. Like an occupation force, you make Hamas illegal. You need 40,000 people to occupy a 2.3 million person area. The most they've ever tried to do an occupation with was 9,000. It didn't work. In Germany, we had 1 million people occupying, Americans, Brits, allied forces stayed in Germany for 4 years after the war. Nazism was made illegal. And after 4 years, things got rebuilt and calmed down. And that seems like a reasonable model. You don't need as many people because you only have 2 million Gazans, but nobody's going to do it. Nobody wants to do it.
No, because it's a mess.
You know,
Dangerous.
there are a lot of messes out there, and in that same regards, one of the things that Trump has said, and some people on this panel may agree, some people may disagree, and everything. If we're talking about the climate change, because I know that he calls the Green New Deal the Green New Scam, and all along those lines. So there are some folks that say
True.
that is kind of what it is, but there are other people that say that there are legitimate concerns in climate change and all along those lines. So how much of that is rhetoric,
Well,
and how much of that is actual based?
Even the way you've asked that question, right? And I'm not blaming you for this. I'm not having a go at you, Mark. But just even the way that the question's framed, right? Like, Donald Trump says it's a Green New scam, but there are some people that have some legitimate concerns about the environment. Yes, but those things are not mutually exclusive, right? I have legitimate concerns about climate change. I have legitimate concerns about the environmental impact of energy production and farming and all the rest of it that everyone else is worried about. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to support spending trillions and trillions of dollars and introducing international carbon taxes and et cetera, and putting taxes in New Zealand on farting sheep and farting cows. I'm not supporting that, right? Because it's ridiculous and it's not going to achieve anything. I'm not interested in hearing about plastic straws and plastic straws and paper straws when the majority of the plastics that are in the ocean are from leftover fishing nets. Why don't you put a tax on that? So, there are some real issues here, and what they want to do with this Green New Deal is not just fanciful, but it's impractical. It wouldn't work even if you gave them the 80 trillion that they wanted. And if you really believed in it, and I've said this before, and people don't like it when I say it, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. If you care about something, there's one group of people that you don't ever want to entrust with that thing that you care about, and that's the government, okay? Because they have a tendency to screw it up. So if air and water and the very existence of humanity is the issue at hand, why would you trust it to the incompetent morons that put honourable before their name and then say, look at me, I'm a politician? These are not the greatest people that we have. These aren't the world leaders. They're just the idiots that, you give them a bit of money and you let them call themselves some fancy names, oh, yes, well done, come out to an awards ceremony. They're like the actors in Hollywood, right? These people are not important. So don't trust these morons with the things that are actually important.
Well,
So,
in that same
so wait. So
Okay.
I agree with this in that the government solution, you can't compel people to behave themselves with regards to cutting down, everybody's carbon footprint. It's going to be market solutions. When stuff gets bad enough, there are going to be people who see $1 trillion economic opportunities. If Miami starts getting flooded 3 times a year, Lower Manhattan, Houston, New Orleans, if somebody figures out how to make hundreds of billions of dollars saving those cities, saving the Florida coast, then you're going to have business solutions to this. Also, we already have the beginnings of a business solution in that we're entertaining ourselves out of the problem. People are having less sex because there's so much more to pay attention to now compared to the 70s when there was nothing but screwing to do, that we're having fewer babies. The world population is going to peak in 2060. The fewer people, the less climate change. And so
I don't think that that's a very good solution. And also, look, I don't know what activities the Gen Zs are into, but I'm yet to play a video game that was more fun than sex. So I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it differently than other people, but
You might be
you know,
living differently than other people.
that's been my experience. I do want to come to this. I do want to come to your point, though, Rick, about the business opportunity. There is already incredible business opportunities out there. There are technologies and things that we can already do, right? Geothermal, I don't know. There's just so much stuff that we can already do. The question is, why are we not able? Like, why are we not doing it? Why are we not doing it? Look at the Hoover Dam. I can't remember how many homes around the United States are provided with electricity because of the Hoover Dam. You know, you need less than 2% of the available waterways, which is still a big number, but you don't need very many to displace something like 50 to 80% of the electricity usage at a domestic level. Like, there's so many different things that we've done. Now, why isn't it being done? Well, I think the reason why it's not going to be done is because those solutions oftentimes are small solutions. So if you have a look at Norway, for example, they've got these small little, turnstiles they put into waterfalls, and it's like some guy that has it in his backyard, right, who's making $5,000 a month out of it, and it cost him $100,000 to put in, right? Little things like that. Well, they don't want you doing that. They want this to be the domain of the big multinational corporations. And those big multinational corporations go and put the money behind politicians. Doesn't matter if they're left or right-wing politicians. This is a bipartisan issue. They put the money behind the politicians. They get the legislation they want. They get the regulations they want. They get the exemptions that they want. And guess what you get? You get no solution. Because you often find the things that they are suggesting or offering are often worse than the original problem that they were trying to solve.
Well,
and this is where the problem is.
Exactly.
Everything you just said applies to
there are two issues that are out
let
there.
me talk for a second, please.
There are two issues out there that are very
Mark, let him talk.
There are two things that are very common that I don't know that we see them being used because of those money efforts that are put in there. I mean, I hear the ads all the time where people are saying, how easy it would be to put solar power on your house if you live in a house, which y'all know I don't live in, and everything, and the wind farms, which don't get the kind of benefits that they probably should get, because I mean, the wind and the sun are.
Yeah, but you don't need to have the solutions that are being offered. Is let's go and spend. What was it? There was a study. I think it was in Nevada or somewhere, or maybe it was California, Rick, where they spent like $500 million or $600 million something building this massive big solar farm. I was just in the middle of Australia, out back nowhere of Australia. There was this huge big solar farm. Then I'm like, what the hell is it doing? Nobody even. But how are you going to pump the electricity back? It just makes no sense. Wind farms. Look, there's little technology you can put on people's houses. There's so many different things you can do. But see, they want to roll these things out of, like, you go out and buy a $5,000 or $10,000 solar system, put it on your roof, get some batteries in. It's not going to work for everybody, especially given how many people live in condos and apartments and things like that. Neither does it address the other big issue, which is the massive amount of electricity being used by by factories and industrial use. But Rick, you wanted to respond, so if you want to jump in.
Said everything you said about regulatory capture, where big companies own the politicians, applies to oil companies.
Absolutely.
They're not the. LA used to have a pretty decent public transit system. We all know the deal. They laid it out in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The oil companies bought the trolleys, tore up the tracks, so everybody would be forced to use cars. Right now, the power companies in California are lazy and a little bit corrupt, and they've made it tougher to get compensated for rooftop solar.
But let me just come in on that. Coming on that point, that may be the case in California, but we're seeing this happen all over the Western world, and we're seeing the same thing. We've got young people out there who are really frustrated, who don't really have, it's not that they're idiots, they're just young. They don't have as much life experience and they don't have as much knowledge right now. They've been told their whole life, like, hey, leave the place a bit better than you found it, clean up after yourself, go pick up litter out of the schoolyard, all that sort of stuff. They're doing all that. Then they're saying, hey, like, there's a problem here that we've been told about. We want to fix it. So they jump behind some protest, and then they, some of them go a little bit too far, and they go join Just Stop Oil and throw paint and tomato soup and stuff at paintings. 2 of those kids are being jailed shortly, by the way, that did that, I think, in London. So they go out and do all these things, but then you sit down with these kids and say, what do you think the solution is? And they're like, I don't know, solar panels, wind farm. They don't know. They've got no idea. And this is the thing. It's like, you're absolutely right. Big corporations have acted like this all throughout modern history. And I find myself totally confused, because when I was growing up, certainly as I was becoming an adult after September 11, the left orthodoxy was don't trust big corporations and don't trust big government and all these people are terrible. And now left-wing people are like, oh, well, I've decided I'm going to be obedient and trust big corporations. I'm like, what?
What left wing people have you been hanging around with? I don't know any left wing person in North Carolina that is a government supporter or loves government and everything. So I don't know which ones you've been hanging around with and everything.
Well, left-wing governments, and left-wing people, what they tend to advocate for is for politicians that want to increase the power that government has. They want more regulations. They want government to have an ever bigger impact and influence over your life. Well, if you don't trust them in the first place, I mean, look at what they've done. Look at Flint, Michigan, right? I've never been to Flint, Michigan, but from what I understand, the water quality there is terrible. Now, like, how is this a problem? Well, I heard about that when I was like 10 years old. I'm now 40. So you've had 30 years that I know of, and still the people there don't have access to clean drinking water. Meanwhile, there's some water company over there, from what I understand, that is underpaying for water that is subsidized by the state or by that local area. They're taking the water and selling it, but the people that live there don't have clean drinking water. Like, how is this okay with anybody? I don't understand. I just don't get it.
Now check with my.
It happens everywhere, not just in the United States. I've been watching.
I'm not just picking on you, Kimberly. I'm picking on every Western country, not just America.
I know, but I'm just saying, I see that problem everywhere, and the wealthy always gets their hands into the pockets of whatever is needed, and they manipulate. But yeah, Rick.
I'll say, so one reason young people aren't against certain big corporations is some big corporations don't feel like corporations. They just feel like what you're swimming in. The Google and Apple. Apple's the thing in your hand that you talk to hundreds of times a day. It doesn't feel like a big corporation. It feels like your little mechanical friend in your hand. And somebody using it to get everything they need doesn't pay much attention to all the lawsuits involving Apple versus the government for monopoly and bad business practices. Diddle for Google, for Amazon. That's just where we go to get our stuff.
Yeah, but that's not. But once again, Rick, that's not how it was, right? Now I know that you guys are roughly my age. I know you're all only about 6 months to a year older than me. So if you guys remember back about 20, 30 years ago, right? Remember what the internet was? It was like IRC and MIRC and ICQ and all these and you had to type stuff in and it was just absolute crap, But it was really fun and exciting because that was what we had, right? That was just how it was, right? And one of the things was that the internet was kind of like this free, open source kind of thing, and people weren't really trying to make money out of it as such, And then some people would say, okay, well, I'm going to start up my own ISP company and, get some modems, racks of servers and stuff and put them in my bedroom and, that sort of stuff. But people weren't really trying to make much money out of it. Then you started to see some things like online banking and all that sort of stuff. Now, what you've seen is, like with the whole Netscape debacle and all that sort of stuff, what you've now seen is you've got companies like Google and Microsoft that basically own the internet. So you can't even set up a new search engine now because you can't scrape the data. But it's little things like that. Now, that would have been unheard of back 20 and 30 years ago. Like groups like Anonymous and all those vigilante, hacking groups were like, no, we'll shut you down. We'll collapse your website if you try and do something like that, which means that you're going to make a profit from taking away our access to information. What's happened to that now? Now it's like, okay, Google's fantastic. No, I'm not trying to shit all over Google, but surely we all have the right to access this information, and other companies that want to compete with them should have the right to be able to do so.
But Shaquille, in that same line and everything, because there was yesterday when I was at my cultural arts center, or the cultural arts center that I worked with, there was a series of movies, and one of the movies actually was a very scary movie, but it was actually a real movie, and I'd love to hear Kim's thoughts about it, because the name of the movie was Sentient. So it was literally this concept of you would give your idea, like if you were going to say, they could watch a movie, but the movie, they could literally jump into the movie. So like if you were watching Ray, the character literally became blind for a minute. And even one of the horror movies, they started getting chased by the axes and everything because the computer was becoming that whole notion of being able to think for itself. So you would give it an idea, and then it would act on that idea. And if that is becoming more of a reality, that can be both a good thing, but also a scary thing. And all along those lines. So I don't know if y'all talked around that. Maybe Kim's got some thoughts, because when I saw this movie, I was like, oh, that's a little bit too close to reality if we're going to have these computers become able to think for themselves.
Well, AI has evolved tremendously in the last 20 years. And actually, people have been working on AI probably since 1960. A lot of people just haven't been aware of it. We have the quantum computers that they're still trying to utilize and everything. And, so far we've seen a lot of what was predicted in science fiction come true. I mean, think about it. We actually have autonomous driving cars. We now have seen autonomous driving police officers and they're robots that stick their heads out of cars and tell people what to do. So I think that we're seeing, Skylabs evolve. How far we allow it to go, I don't know. But I think what we have done is we have allowed the very few who are excessively wealthy take over every aspect of our lives without any regulation or control. And this was something that we tried to warn the people about as telecom was kind of emerging out of the world and datacom and mobile were evolving. They didn't want to regulate it. So now we're at the mercy of whoever's got the puppet strings. So that's the way I see it.
Kim, in that same line and everything, one of the things that I found interesting is that Elon Musk has been very much around the EVs, and he even made this statement recently of this notion that certain EV regulations will be doing very good for him, but it would hurt his EV competitors and everything. So I mean, I guess that's good from
that's exactly the thing. That's what I think what I'm talking about with the internet, right? With the comments that I made before. The internet back in the day was like the Wild West, like anything could happen, and you didn't really have a lot of trust in things like internet banking and stuff like that. You'd use phone banking, back in the days where you'd like dial in your numbers and stuff like that. So, that was where it was. It was unregulated, but that meant it was open to competition. That meant that, hey, you don't want to use Microsoft's system, go use Unix, and you can learn how to do it online, which you still kind of can, but nobody's going to because all the apps aren't going to work on it. So there's all this sort of stuff that happens. And what's happened is those people have gotten wealthy by operating in an unregulated space. Once they get big, the way that they entrench their position of power is to ask for regulations because it stops competition. And that cements themselves as being the big players.
Well, I just want to throw in that the people, especially when it comes to EV, people are being excessively ignorant if they think that we need to go back to gas and get everything back down because, the United States did a lot of work back when Biden first stepped into office. They convinced Ford to shut down all their manufacturing in China, and they actually brought it here, giving many, many people in Tennessee who needed jobs thanks to the music industry falling down. It gave many, many people jobs, thousands and thousands, not just building the facilities, contractors and everything, but people on the manufacturing lines. So we, everything that everyone said, oh, we need to do, it was done. It was not only done, but it was helping people who needed help. And we did close down a lot of manufacturing in China. So just be careful what you wish for, because there are a lot of things in place right now that if they continue to grow, that it's going to help all of the hardworking Americans. AI and EV can be, your friend, or it could be your enemy. Right now, I think it's our friend the way it needs to be regulated a little bit more, though.
We don't have nimble government. Right now, the federal government is paralyzed and stumbling. And when the government fails to offer protections and solutions, then private individuals will work out their own solutions. So that works for rich people who can buy good solutions, and it works for clever people who know how to code and can break the locks on.
Well, you just set up somewhere else. You just set up somewhere else, but I just want to talk about this whole regulation thing for a minute. Rick talked about CRISPR and the ability to, or the potential ability that we'll have to alter our DNA. And you can even DNA hack yourself, so it's not just for babies. But there's a worldwide ban on DNA manipulation of babies. One person I'm aware of was charged with doing this. But why did he do it? He did it because the babies they had a mother who was HIV positive, if memory serves me correctly. And what he did was he altered their DNA so that they wouldn't be susceptible to catching HIV. So, like, that was, I thought, a good use of the technology. He wasn't doing anything else to them. He wasn't making them, like, superhuman or anything. But yet he did time in jail for it. You know, another doctor experimented with giving a little girl, like, hepatitis or something, and she never ended up with it. But the reason he gave it to her was in order for that to attack some cancer cell or some rare thing that she had. And she was actually terminal when he did it, and she survived. He lost his license as a result. But she's alive. She beat it as a result of this experimental technology. But you get the regulations that come in and say, no, just it's better and safer for you to let her die than to try something else first. This is across every industry and across every country. Regulations that make no sense, that you can't go to government and say, look, can you make an exception because there's a compelling reason to. Rick?
Well, yeah, but you're going to have CRISPR terrorism. People are going to, because it's not, it's technology that's within reach of private lunatics who can cook up some virus. You know, say somebody in a book, a novel I'm writing, you know, there are terrorists 10 years from now who release viruses that are supposed to make people smarter, you know, and with bad consequences. But these are terrorists who get in there, you know, or make people live longer. People will release, you know, some lunatics will do terrorism with CRISPR.
Sure.
Well,
I can see that.
yeah, okay, but that's like saying we shouldn't embrace a certain technology because people can do bad with it. Everything can be used bad.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying it's inevitable, and everything gets, you know, lunatics infect everything, and we'll have more good things that happen because of CRISPR than bad things. But if you're writing a novel, you know, you want to write about some of the bad things because that's, you know, more exciting.
Generally speaking, it is, yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, on the side of entertainment, yeah, you want something that's going to be a little bit more exciting and everything. The thing that I didn't get to it, I was curious about, and maybe we only got about 2 minutes to go, but there was a major candidate that kind of put their forces behind Kamala and everything. So maybe we'll talk about that on Monday. But everybody was waiting to see when Michelle.
Did anybody really think that the Obamas weren't going to endorse her? Did anybody really think that they were not going to endorse her seriously?
Well,
No.
I mean, I think that they were waiting for the endorsement and just waiting to see how it was going to be done. Apparently, it was done over a telephone call, but yeah, they were waiting to see when it would happen and all along those lines. I see that Kim's got something from AI, and maybe we'll show that as we go out.
Yeah, I want to share the new AI police that they've got going on now. It's pretty cool. I mean, I've seen the autonomous driving cars in San Francisco, so and you know, for like the last two or 3 years now, and it's been interesting watching those take over the city. But watch this. This is so. I don't know what you would call it, Terminator or iRobot. That's what this one girl called it. Come on. Can you add it?
Yeah, there you go. Well, you just had it. But I'll go back. Hold on.
All right, let's try again.
Yeah.
It's more than what my...
Yeah, just hit play again. I think you
Try again.
Yeah, exactly.
Fasten your seatbelt. Stop using your phone while driving.
So what you're saying that
So that's what we...
that Tesla truck, nobody's...
Yeah,
at the
so...
wheel.
Yeah, so you have a robot in the Tesla now at marked police car, and it goes around telling people what to do. You know, that's where we've headed, folks, and it's at the end of the hour, and we look forward to seeing you Monday, please take care over the weekend. Be careful traveling. They're still having problems with the airports. Stay safe, stay healthy, and you'll stay wealthy. Hi.
Hey,
Boy, everybody took a nosedive. Are they going to Sasha's show?
they're going to the sausage show. Dan and Shaquille over there. I don't know who else, but Dan and Shaquille.
Who is?
Dan Worthington and Shaquille.
Oh, okay. I thought Sasha invited everybody.
He did. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
I know those two.
What's it about today?
It's always about Ukraine, Russia. I don't know what the twist is.
I'm not quite sure what he's up to. Do you want to pop in? Let's go pop in.
I'm already going because I'm directing it.
Okay. I'll see you in a minute.